Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be diving into an absolutely monumental shift in human history. Seriously, we're tracking one man's incredible physical and spiritual journey, a literal migration from an ancient, totally entrenched world of many gods to the revolutionary belief in just one. We're talking, of course, about Abram, the man who would later become known as Abraham. Today's agenda maps out this epic transformation. We'll be covering the call from Haran, the ancient religious context, the journey to the Promised Land, settling in Shechem, and finally, famine and Egypt. Section 1, the call from Haran. To set the stage for this ultimate inciting incident, imagine having your entire life, everything you know, totally upended, not in your adventurous 20s, but when you're 75 years old. Listen to the gravity of this divine directive from Genesis 12:1. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. Think about how radical that sudden call actually was. Abram is basically being asked to leave his entire familiar world behind, his homeland, his family network, his complete security, for a totally unknown destination. It's just a massive leap into the dark.
Section 2, Ancient Religious Context.
Now, to truly appreciate the weight of Abram's sacrifice, you kind of have to understand the world he was leaving behind. He was born in Ur, an ancient Mesopotamian city dominated by these massive stepped temple complexes called ziggurats. The whole religious center of gravity there, and later up in Haran, where his family moved, was all about worshiping local deities, specifically the moon goddess Nana. In this society, believing in dozens of different gods wasn't just common, it was the absolute unquestioned norm. And the drama of Abram leaving? It gets so much bigger when you realize a surprising historical irony. His own father, Terah, wasn't just some passive worshiper. Historical context actually suggests he was a merchant who made and sold these very idols. Abram literally grew up in the family business of carving out the gods of his neighbors. So leaving wasn't just a physical move. It meant firing himself from the family business and walking away from his economic safety net. The son of an idol salesman founding monotheism, you really can't write a better twist than that.
Section 3, Journey to the Promised Land.
So walking away from that established business and those predictable local gods, Abram takes a terrifying leap of faith. But he isn't just jumping blindly, right? He's stepping out based on a massive divine guarantee. This newly revealed one God promises him three huge things: that he'll become a great nation, have a famous name, and be a blessing to all families on earth. It's an absolutely mind-blowing covenant, especially when you remember that Abram was elderly and he and his wife Sarai were entirely childless at the time. Just think about the sheer geographic distance of this journey, starting way down in Ur near the Persian Gulf, migrating north to Haran, and then taking his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and their whole household down along ancient trade routes into the land of Canaan. We're talking hundreds of miles over incredibly rough terrain, navigating through different kingdoms and empires, and the whole thing is driven solely by faith in a God he couldn't even see. Section 4, Settling in Shechem. After that grueling trek, the caravan finally makes it to the Promised Land of Canaan, making their very first major stop at a super significant location, Shechem. Now, this was a lush, fertile valley right between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, roughly 60 kilometers north of present-day Jerusalem. At the time Abram arrived, Shechem was a prominent local capital, heavily populated by the native Canaanites. It was basically a bustling hub of regional activity. Here's where it gets really interesting. Abram pitches his tent near this massive tree, the ancient oak of Moreh. Imagine setting up your new home base literally in the shadow of your rival's headquarters. Because this ancient oak wasn't just a tree. It was a major pagan worship site. It was the religious epicenter for the local Canaanites, sometimes even referred to as the diviner's oak. Notice the truly stark theological contrast going on here. In the ancient Near East, religious practice was totally geographical. When folks traveled to a new region, they prayed to the local spirits of that specific territory. But Abram introduces a radically new concept. He's worshiping the exact same universal one God, no matter whose borders he crosses. That was completely unheard of. To officially mark the birth of this monotheistic faith in his new home, Abram takes action. He builds a physical stone altar to the one singular creator God right there in Shechem, literally right in the shadow of that pagan oak of Moreh. And he actually does it again later near Bethel. By building these altars, he wasn't just worshiping. He was claiming the land, not with weapons, but with faith, dedicating it to the God who brought him there in the first place. Section 5. Famine and Egypt. It seems like the journey has reached its peak, right? He arrived safely, established this revolutionary faith, and got God's direct promise that this exact land would belong to his descendants. You'd naturally think his struggles were over, but we have to ask, did arriving in the promised land actually mean an easy life of immediate comfort? Well, absolutely not. Out of nowhere, a severe famine strikes the land of Canaan. All that lush fertility in Shechem just dries right up. This devastating ecological disaster forces Abram into full survival mode. He has to quickly abandon this newly claimed land and desperately pivot south, heading toward the powerful, resource-rich empire of Egypt, simply to keep his family from starving. Genesis 12:10 tells us, "Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to live there for a while." Honestly, this brilliantly illustrates such a profound truth. The journey of faith is almost never a straight, easy line. Abram is tested right out of the gate, having to leave the land he was promised almost the second he gets there. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating and honestly provocative question to ponder. Abram just established this brand new, incredibly fragile monotheistic faith. How on earth is this belief in one unseen God going to survive as he walks directly into the heart of the mighty, intensely idol-worshipping empire of Egypt?